What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 predictions. The North Carolina Tar Heels are up next. Let's take a look at some of the other predictions. The FPI has them at 8.2 and 4.2, about a 40% chance to go to the ACC championship. So that's a pretty high number. They're third. They have the third best chance according to the FPI, behind Clemson and Florida State. Athlon has them at 8 and 4. The over/under is at 8.5. So 8 and 4, 9 and 3 seems like those are the most likely records for North Carolina. But 8 and 4, based on the FPI and Athlon, 8 and 4 does seem like the most likely record for this team. So 8 and 4, 9 and 3. My thoughts on this team: I think the offense is going to be really good once again with Drake May back, weapons around him. They're going to score a ton of points just like they did last year. And I think the defense will be better. I think they'll be improved. I don't think they're going to be great on defense, but you look at some of the additions in the transfer portal, some key players coming back, they shouldn't be terrible on defense. And if they can improve enough there and get the offense going even better potentially, this team could be really dangerous this year. And I think they're a sleeper team. I think everyone's just penciling in Clemson and Florida State in the ACC championship. I think North Carolina absolutely has a chance to get into that conversation. Schedule sets up pretty well for them also. They don't play Florida State. They'll open up with South Carolina on September the 2nd. That game will be in Charlotte. Prime time ABC Saturday night game. Gonna be a good one. Looking forward to this matchup. And this game's really going to set the tone for both teams. I think the winner of this game will go on to have a really good season. I think the loser is going to have a very average season. So this is, to me, a huge game for these two programs, these two teams. You look at the matchup, I think North Carolina is the better team. I think you compare their rosters, they're the better team. Both teams should be able to score in this game. Both teams, I think, are going to have their struggles on defense. I think North Carolina has a better offensive line, which could be the difference. I think South Carolina's could really struggle this year. So yeah, I think North Carolina finds a way to win it. Drake May makes some plays, and I trust Drake May more than Spencer Rattler with the game on the line. So I'm going to go with UNC. I think most people are picking South Carolina, but I'm going to go against that. I'm going to pick the Tar Heels to get the win. Then they'll play App State. Remember that game they had with all the points? I think that was last year. Expect another shootout more than likely, but I think North Carolina's defense will make enough plays. Playing at home, they win this game by at least a couple of touchdowns and get to 2-0. Minnesota is an interesting matchup here. September 16th, it's at North Carolina. I can tell you right now what Minnesota's going to try to do in this game. They're going to try to run the football, use a lot of clock, keep the North Carolina offense on the sidelines, because I think Minnesota's defense is going to be a little bit of a liability this year. And so this is one that's going to be interesting to see if that strategy works. We've seen PJ Fleck do that in the past in games. So I think Minnesota is going to try to keep this game down to as few possessions as possible. Will it work? It might. I think Minnesota, it's a bad matchup for North Carolina. I think Minnesota is probably gonna get this game how they want it. But the defense for Minnesota is, I think, going to be the problem. I think North Carolina is going to score when they do have the ball most of the time. I don't think Minnesota's offense is going to score a ton. And so I do like North Carolina at home, but in a close one, I think Minnesota makes it ugly. They make it close, but I do think the Tar Heels find a way to get it done. And so that's a pretty difficult start to the season with South Carolina, App State, Minnesota. Then you go on the road, first true road game at Pitt. And Pitt's going to try to do something similar, pretty similar to Minnesota, probably not as extreme. You look at Phil Dracovic for coming over from Boston College. They've got a quarterback that I think they believe in here at Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to be better than Minnesota's. Plus, they're playing at home. I just feel like this is one North Carolina's probably going to lose. So I think Pittsburgh gets it done at home, and they give North Carolina their first loss. But when you look at those first four games, I think the record will be 3-1. I feel pretty confident that North Carolina will be 3-1 after their first four games. Perhaps they lose to South Carolina and beat Pittsburgh, or they lose to Minnesota. However it winds up happening, I think they lose one of those four games. That's too much. Those four games I think are going to be too much to go 4-0. And even possibly they could be 2-2 at this point. But I'm going to say 3-1, and then they get their bye week pretty early. So after the first four games, they get a bye week. Then they play Syracuse. Not all that high on Syracuse this year. I think North Carolina's defense will probably give up some points, but they're going to score enough to win this one fairly comfortably. I've got them beating Syracuse. Then they get Miami at home. This is actually a huge game because I think if Clemson or Florida State, if one of those teams winds up struggling this year and they lose 2 or 3 conference games, enough to maybe not get to the ACC championship, I think the winner of this game probably goes to the ACC championship. I think, again, this is a huge game. If that's not the case, I think it's still probably a battle for 3rd place in the ACC. I think Duke is going to be in that conversation as well. Maybe NC State, maybe Pittsburgh. I mean, I'm not saying for sure, but it's definitely, there's the possibility that these are the 3rd and 4th best teams in the ACC. And I think talent-wise, Miami probably has a slight advantage in this game, but I just don't trust their offense, especially the way they played last year. I think they'll be better this year, but I just don't trust their offense to win a shootout here. I think North Carolina scores a ton of points. They get it done at home. It's close, but I'm going to go with the Tar Heels. So 5-1. Then they play Virginia on the 21st. Home game. Virginia, I don't expect them to be very good this year. The roster is not great. I think the Tar Heels get it done. They score a lot of points again. I think that's going to be the story of their season. They'll give up some, but they'll score enough to win this one comfortably. Get to 6-1, then they'll play Georgia Tech on the road October 28th. Georgia Tech beat them last year, and I think they have a chance to do it again. You look at the defense for Georgia Tech, I think they're going to be pretty solid. It's hard to really say for sure what we're going to get from Georgia Tech. So this one is a tough one to predict, but I'm just going to say, there's an upset in there somewhere, and maybe this is it. So I'm going to say Georgia Tech beats North Carolina for the 2nd straight year. They'll bounce back and beat Campbell. Then they play Duke on November 11th. This should be a really good one here. Another shootout type game. North Carolina playing at home. I think North Carolina has the talent advantage. Duke probably has the experience advantage. But by this point in the season, these North Carolina players will be experienced, even the younger guys, the talented players that they have coming up. And I think North Carolina is able to find a way to win. Probably a game where it goes back and forth and whoever has the ball last wins. And I'm going to say that's North Carolina, and they beat Duke. Easily could be flip around Georgia Tech and Duke. Maybe they lose to Duke, beat Georgia Tech, however you want to look at those 2 games. They play Clemson next on the 18th. On the road, we saw last year Clemson dominated. I think it's just a bad matchup for North Carolina, the physicality of this Clemson team. And plus playing on the road, I just don't see them winning this game. I'd be very surprised if they won. It might not even be close. I think Clemson for sure wins this game. North Carolina falls to 8-3. Then they'll play NC State to close out the season. Remember last year, NC State went to North Carolina and beat them and really it was still a good season for North Carolina, but really messed up what would have been a really good season. I think North Carolina returns the favor. I think this year they go on the road. They beat NC State. I don't think NC State's going to be quite as good as they were last year. I know playing at home, they're going to have a great shot. It's a rivalry. I expect it to be close. But I think Drake May makes some plays late. North Carolina finds a way to go on the road and win this game. And this, actually, looking at my predictions here, this would be their only true road win. I didn't even realize that when I was making my predictions. So I have them winning all their home games, their neutral site game, losing all their road games except for NC State. And again, you could flip that with Georgia Tech. I think they win for sure one of these games on the road, and I've got them finishing 9-3. So give me your thoughts, your predictions on North Carolina down in the comments below.